Greetings all, Ben here from East West. Just going to take a look at some of these uranium stocks for the week. I'm just going to concentrate on Cameco and UEC, and I'm going to have a look at energy fuels. That one's causing a bit of consternation and just throwing up some puzzles that need solving. It's not quite as straightforward as some of the other ones. So let's just jump into it. So just starting off with Cameco here, and we're just sort of starting to just pause a little bit here. I mean, we've got some pretty good weekly bottoms that we've held here, but obviously this week we've had a little bit of a down week and we're just shying away from the top of this trend channel. However, everything's still trending high. There's no reason to do anything here. It's all looking pretty good. We are still out of balance, but everything's still so far so good. There's nothing majorly untoward going on here with the indicators on a weekly basis. We do have this double top in the RSI, and this week the RSI has just slid off just a touch. So we are still hot, but the ADX, the trend strength indicator, is flattened out, which we would sort of expect with the way that these 3 weeks have panned out, where the rally's just lost a little bit of its impetus. But like I said, so far it's all still intact. Everything looks all right. So in terms of the range this week, we've had a little bit of an inside range from last week, obviously owing to this big spike that we had back here last Friday. But obviously, we had 4 sort of down days, and then we've come back today on Friday and just rallied back, which could just be a part of the overall strength of the market, because obviously now that the S&P's broken well and clear away from its range that it was setting, there's a lot of overall strength in the market. So, we've responded quite well here, and this is obviously a pretty good sign. I mean, you can see all this sort of rejection down here of these low prices, just sort of down here in the mid 40s. So far so good. This would just be the point to watch. We'll just see if the market can extend next week. So one thing, just looking at the volume profiles as they've developed over the weeks. I mean, we've stepped down a little bit, but like I said, this is the point of control here was right down at the bottom. So that to me would suggest, especially that this area that we just highlighted, there's people buying down here. There's not a lot of willing sellers. So this becomes the area and this point of control in this high volume area for the week. And we've the fact that we closed well away from it is a pretty good sign. That just to me, I would suggest that there's just interest here. There's a zone of demand, and that's holding out quite well. So into next week, we just watch these areas that the market's just been bouncing around in for a little while, and this remains crucial. I mean, yeah, there could be a little bit of supply coming in here, but it looks more like that the demand zone's more important at this stage. So, this would be great, but if this sort of cracks, then we'll have to come back and think about it if we sort of start to come in to test some of this sort of stuff a little bit lower. But we're not doing that. We're still well and truly intact in the uptrend. We've just had a little bit of a pause here this week. So yeah, I'd just be watching that zone next week. So looking at UEC here, and it's been yet another impressive week for this stock, and it remains my favourite stock just in terms of the strength that it's showing. It just doesn't look like it's got any sign of abating, even though we're running hot, but price is dragging the Tenkan with it now, so we want to see some sort of wick to just come back and test this. But as things sit, it's still just continuing on its merry way. There's no reason to think that it's going to roll over anytime soon. We're not getting any of those signs there. So even just looking at the indicators, there's nothing here in the MACD for me. The RSI remains in the hot zone, and maybe it's just flattening out a tad here, but it's not. I think we've snuck through this peak. We've been through it. So even though it's running hot, the ADX, the trend is continuing to strengthen because we just keep getting these sort of positive weeks. So there's no reason to do much with UEC here. Just sit tight. So just, looking at all this, we've obviously come up here and made a new weekly high. Now we do have a couple of tops here, so we just have to watch this because we want to see that get broken. I don't know if there's a bit of distribution going on there. But that remains a key, and then this was the weekly low that we sort of we've driven away from, but this is just defying all the odds. Now when I say defying the odds, it's still marching to the beat of its own drum. But you can see we came right down here and just tested into the zone. But we've pulled right away from it, and we've closed pretty close to the weekly high. So this is all looking pretty good. There's still nothing untoward going on here. Nothing to make me think that there's something to pay attention to. Other than this, I like to see this broken. Just the fact that we've got quite a few wicks up there, that'd be just the zone that I just want this to propel through, just to make me feel that okay, that we've got yet another swing going in here that is another higher high with a higher low. Now, as we look at the volume profile through the weeks, so just on this weekly, we continue to step up in these points of control, and we've closed above it again towards the top of the range. So everything is still very strong here. Like I said, we just want to make sure that this looks like not quite as a lot of acceptance here. So we just want to make sure that zone that we highlighted up the top here doesn't turn into a distribution zone. So we want to see this busted sometime soon. But like I said, there's nothing untoward going on here. This is all pretty good, and it's still putting out the signs that it's going to keep going. So far so good. Just stick tight with UEC. So now we come to the problem child, which has been energy fuels, and this, I don't know, this is the one that just didn't take out the top. It's the only one. All the rest of them took out this top and continued on their merry way. This one's just shying away. So the puzzle, the plot here is a little bit thicker. The puzzle's not quite as straightforward as what some of the others were. We're in balance here on the weekly, but I think I've highlighted this before. The fact that we've got a lot of distance here to the cloud just makes me think, oh, okay, well, we've got to be a little bit careful with this one. Now, there's a couple of options emerging here, I think, especially in an Elliott sense. And remember, price leads Elliott. Elliott doesn't lead price. So what we do is we just wait for this to unfold, and then we try to build some sort of structure around it to give us some sort of idea of what we might be dealing with. So I think there's a couple of options popping up here, but this is certainly just not behaving in the same manner as everything else. Now, even just looking at the indicators, we've got the crossover now in the MACD on a weekly. So like I said, and even this, the histogram, obviously, because of the crossover, has turned red. So that in itself is not necessarily a panic signal, but it just makes you think, okay, well, what else is going on here? Because none of the others are showing this sort of thing. We've got the RSI slipping a little bit more. I mean, it had this big sort of down movement here, which means that some of these, as the RSI is calculated, some of these strong candles would drop out of start to drop out of the series of the calculation, and some of these more downward candles are starting to drag it all down. And the other thing too, of course, is that the ADX is now starting to weaken off. So even though we'd say when the market's above 20, we've got a strong trend we've got a trend in place, but now we're just sort of wilting away. And we can see here that the directional movement indexes are very close to crossing, which hasn't happened since May. Okay, but now even these crossed. We got a cross here back in Feb, a negative cross, and the market drifted off. So whether or not that's going to happen again, I don't know, but I'm just looking at this thinking, okay, well, this is just not putting out the same sort of signals that everything else is. Why? I mean, I don't know 100%. I mean, from my own very basic study of the balance sheets and etc. with energy fuels, it still looks okay. So I don't know why this one is wilting so much, but let's put that aside and just look at what we can see and try to figure it all out. So, unlike some of the other ones, just looking at the ranges here, I mean, we've opened here in the middle of sort of last week's range, and we've made a new weekly low below the November low. So that in itself is not perfect, but we did have a pretty good bounce back today to just touch into 50% of the week's range. So we're sort of sitting there a little bit undecided, just looking at these ranges. But the fact that it just continues to weaken off isn't, I mean, why is it doing that when everything else is going the other way? Now, of course, we've had this step down in the points of control. The fact that we've regained it is good. We've closed above it for the week. So, the buyers did come in to save the day at the end of the week. But, these points of control are stepping down. And we can see in the other ones, they're not, even though maybe Cameco stepped down a little bit, UEC just continues to ladder up. Whereas this one is just weakening off. So, what's going on here? Well, the one thing that probably hasn't escaped your attention is the fact that we've basically got a double bottom coming in here. And when we look back, you can see that we've got what looks like a reasonably broad area coming in here. I mean, we'll sort of wick through this a little bit, but, it's not, there's nothing dire going on. But the market's held this now. So is this becoming a new point of support? That's what I would be thinking at this stage, because as long as, I mean, of course we need to push further, but so far this is looking okay. At least just when you think about the fact that it's visited these zones and it continues to bounce away. I mean, we've only got one day. We need more, of course. But, so far so good, just in terms of visiting this low and rejecting it. So even just taking a market profile from the first time, a fixed range, from the first time that we visited this as a support zone, there's just, to me, I'm just looking at this sort of node down here and just thinking, well, there's not a lot of market acceptance down here. I mean, we had some churn through here, but to me, this would just suggest that there's enough bidding going on there and there's not a lot of willing selling. So, obviously, we don't want this to break. Because that would mean that the buyers are done and there's been enough selling pressure to get us through. But so far, that's guessing. So far, all we can deal with is what's in front of us right now. And so far, we've got an area here that's held quite a few times with not a lot of interest from sellers. So, it looks like there's unfilled demand in this zone. It's just setting up as a demand zone. So we need to watch this quite carefully. But obviously, ultimately, we want to take out this top. We want to get through this. But, it looks like there's going to have to be a fair bit of wrestling going on before we can do that. It might take a bit of time. So what does that mean? I mean, what is happening here with energy fuels, in a pattern sense? Because when we look at all this, where we think, well, okay, well, all those others are just still sort of climbing on. They're not showing this same pattern of flatness that energy fuels has shown. Now, the cyclical outlook here is a little bit untoward because I was sort of expecting this was the cycle length around about 50, and we've had this bottom right on 50 days, but we did break this low. So technically, this would be a failed cycle. Now, what that could mean is that there's a chance that, because of the way that everything else is shaping up, there's a chance that this becomes the next intermediate cycle low, okay? And that we've got one intermediate cycle, and that would mean, well, what we need to see from here is we would want to see a new cycle that doesn't fail, because that way so what I mean is we would get a run up and then a correction that doesn't take out this low. If we got that, then we go, okay, well then it'll probably take longer than that, of course, but then that would be daily cycle one of the next cycle, and we could go on further. So I sort of look at that. I mean, this is all unproven yet, because this has got to happen for this to consolidate. But right now we do have a slight break here. So I wouldn't have said that this is one whole cycle, because it's too long. It just fits the pattern quite nicely that we would have the low, which actually just happened. It doesn't always coincide, but it just happened to coincide right on the median cycle length. So we've still got some stuff to get through here. To confirm this is a cycle low, we need to get above the 10-day moving average and break the trend line, which obviously you can see that would probably happen simultaneously. Once we sort of do that, then you're coming back here going, okay, well, this is a daily cycle low. That would be daily cycle 5. And if we get a non-failed cycle from there, then we've got an intermediate cycle low. So that would be quite bullish going forward. But then I sort of look at this and think, okay, well, how does that translate? How can I draw an Elliott pattern around that to describe the market, describe the stage that I think the market's at? So I think there's two potential options. I mean, the way I'd been looking at it was like this, and I was sort of looking at it this way because of the way that the other stocks were performing. That, we'd had this sort of one wave, a two wave, a three wave, and then this was going to be a four. But for that to have happened, this looks less likely to be. This is definitely not the bottom of four, because we know this is lower. But I think there's two ways to look at this. Could this be four? Okay, and what we've got here is just, if this was going to be 4, this hasn't gone far enough to be a flat. So if this was going to be 4, I'd expect a little bit more of a zigzag. But of course, the problem with that is that if we come in and take out this, you'd have an overlap, and that would disqualify that from being an impulse. Okay. So this is still valid, and yeah, that could be enough. That certainly could be enough. Now, the one thing that's troubling me a little bit is even though we've just sort of slipped through 40 here on the daily RSI, that's okay. I mean, it's not like 40 is the exact hard and fast rule. I mean, you can see here that we we slipped down here to 35, okay, and that just heralded the bottom of this. But the fact that we held that, as we came down here and then ran again, that's the next cycle. So you can see here that we've just slipped. So I'm wary of it. I'm not too scared of it, but obviously if price starts to fall away, then we're going to get down here, and then we've got to consider something else. But if that is the case, if that does happen, I've got to take into context what's happening in all the other stocks, and that leads me to think that maybe there's a different path to price open here. Now, the one thing that's slightly problematic here, I would say it's hugely problematic because that still remains important, but if we sort of look at this as being the top of 3, and remember, I had 3 on all the other ones sort of here, and then I thought we got a flat 4, but that doesn't look like what's happening here. So either this is 3, but the thing is, this would be a very deep and big 4 that's pretty out of balance with this 2, and 2's a zigzag here. So they don't have to alternate; it's just a guideline. But the fact that we've gone this deep makes me think, okay, well, could there be something else going on here with energy fuels that puts it in a different leg of the cycle that the other stocks are in? So the way I'd be thinking about this, even though I'm not a massive fan of it, I'm just wondering if this is maybe 3 that we've got a sharp 4 here, and that this is actually the top of 5, and then what that would mean is that we've made maybe possibly a 1 wave of a larger degree, and that this is actually going to be the larger 2, which of course would mean that we're going on for 3, 4, 5 further on in the time frame. But if this starts to come, especially if this breaks, well, the other thing too, I mean, if this is going to be a zigzag, and we don't know that it is going to be, of course, but even though the low's broken, I would think potentially it might have a little bit further to fall. And if it just comes back like that, and this is because this is a big correction now, it sort of kind of makes me think, well, maybe we finished up here for this 1 wave and we're coming down here for a bigger 2 before we push on to get, or this is an A leg, a B leg, but either way we're going to push on for another leg higher. So I think this is an outside possibility at this stage, because I don't like the way this impulse squashes in, but I've got to consider it because the way that this is behaving, which is different from all the other stocks, just lends itself to potentially that is what's going on. So I'm just keeping that open as an option, because I think as things sit, I'm not really thinking that that's the case. I still think that there's a good chance that we're coming in here to make a large 4, which is and really what we're doing is all this is just all that's doing is correcting basically all this. So it's just a run up and then a correction, and then we're gathering ourselves for another run. So there could be some more downside, but remember we went back and we just when we looked at all this structure that's coming in here, and you could almost tie it in, like take the Elliott aside and just look at look left, and what can you see through all this area that the market's sort of held? Okay, we shied away, we've held. Now there was an area of congestion through here. We had a spiky top here. It's all sort of tying in together. So that's why this remains pretty key, I think. But we definitely need to see a bit of an acceleration, soon. Otherwise, it goes without saying that we're in danger of slipping down further. And then, all of a sudden we've got to consider that we're looking at retracing 50% of the whole rally from mid-March, whereas all the other stocks are nowhere near doing that. So Energy Fuels is throwing up some different stuff here, yeah. And just even taking the Elliott away, just looking at the trends. I mean, we had this uptrend that we hadn't really confirmed, but this is something else to just be a little bit wary of. I mean, we know we've fallen out of the main trend channel, but just looking at this now, the one thing I'd be concerned about is that we've come up. We sort of had this sort of trending higher market that we've sort of, even though it wasn't a very well established trend because there wasn't a lot of touches, but we don't want to see this tested from the upside and then this low give way, because then that would give precedence to this potential bear channel that we've got forming up. Now, if that was going to be the bear channel and we started losing this, then I just think that that case for maybe that this is a like some sort of wave 2 zigzag, well, that would become a much stronger possibility and that's maybe how you've got to fashion the count, but that remains to be seen. So let's just see. I mean, it just, I don't think you need me to tell you that it just looks very, very crucial through this area where we don't have a lot of market acceptance, but we just don't want to lose it. Okay, if we lose it, then we're coming back and thinking, well, this is not really behaving the way that we would hope, and all the other stocks are not behaving the same way. So look, I'll leave it there for this week. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.